Today we are on entry 3 of my series talking about spells, which means we're not on level 3, we're on level 2, as you would know, because you're probably a D&D fan. Yes, so we're going to go over the best third-party, second-level spells. This one was trickier than the first two have been. I had a short list of like 20, and I've whittled it down to 11, because I've given myself a bonus one again. But the options here are quite plentiful, and there are some really broken ones that I actually don't like in my campaigns. There's one called Ominous Winds from the Book of Ebon Tides, which gives creatures a d12 minus to all of their d20 tests, basically, which I've not included in the list. As good as it is, I think it's also pretty ban-worthy, and I let a lot of stuff slide in my campaigns. I'm fine with generally everything, so yeah. Anyway, I thought we'd do it again. Let's do it again. Let's get to it, shall we? So my bonus mention this time is a spell called Life Tether, which is from the Grim Hollow Player's Guide, and is one I actually did a build on. The return of damage back thing. Sanguine something or other? Sanguine Sorcerer? I can't remember what I called it. It's fun, anyway. This is an action to cast, is a concentration spell for up to a minute, has a range of 120 feet. The target must make a wisdom saving throw. On a failed save, a sickly green tether forms between you and the target. Whenever you take damage, the tethered target takes half as much rounded down as necrotic damage. If the target drops to 0 hit points before the spell ends, you can take a bonus action to move it to a new target. The new target must also succeed in the wisdom save or be tethered, and you can make a new tether every 2 levels, so 4, 6, 8. I like this spell because it offers a really interesting playstyle where you just kind of bulk your HP up as high as it can go, and then wade into danger, knowing full well that you'll be fine, nothing else will be. It's a lot of fun, and I think it's a playstyle that you don't get much of a chance to do in D&D, so I'm a huge fan of this spell. But that is my honourable mention. Let's start with the alphabetical list, shall we? And we're kicking off with another Grim Hollow spell. This is called Bloat. This is an action to cast, and it lasts a round. It has a 30-foot range. You cause the gases within a creature you can see within range to expand rapidly. The target makes a con saving throw, taking 3d10 on a failed save or half as much on a successful one. If the damage that the creature takes equals or exceeds its Constitution ability score, which is pretty likely at low levels, because the average here is, let's see, 5.5 times 5, 16.5, so rounded up is 17. So the average of 17 there is pretty high, and at lower levels, creatures are going to have good Constitution scores, but very rarely this high. Higher levels, it's a lot trickier, obviously. Anyway, if it's equal to or exceeds the Constitution ability score, the creature floats vertically 5 feet up and remains suspended until the start of your next turn. The target can only move by pushing or pulling against a fixed object or surface within reach, as if it were climbing, basically. When the spell ends, the target floats gently to the ground, so it doesn't take full damage. I just think this is a really entertaining spell for kind of getting an enemy to stop. It's novel, and I appreciate novelty. Next is another Grim Hollow spell. I really do like the book, so it's not a huge shock that we're seeing a few of these. This is a bonus action to cast and requires concentration and lasts for a minute. You touch a non-magical weapon. Until the spell ends, the first creature hit by the weapon must succeed on a con saving throw or receive a festering wound. A creature with such a wound takes 2d6 damage at the start of each of its turns for the spell's duration. So again, it's a minute, so it's 10 rounds, generally speaking. A creature can only have one of these at a time, and if the creature receives healing, the spell and the recurring damage end. It also goes up by 1d6 for every spell slot above level 2. So while this isn't a huge amount of damage, this is a decent enough amount of damage, and it's a fun way to work as a team. If you're not playing necessarily a melee caster or a Gish build, you can enchant a ranger's weapon with this or something like that. It doesn't state that it has to be a melee weapon, so you can do this at range, you can do this with a crossbow, and I just think that's really entertaining. I think it's interesting. I think it creates some really fun circumstances on the battlefield where the GM has to decide whether or not they want to heal, or the creatures if they want to heal, and you can all sort of gather around and try to counterspell any healing they might receive, things like that. Next is Chain of Conviction, which is from the Crooked Moon book. This is also a bonus action to cast, and one of my players loved this when they were playing a Fiend Warlock. You hurl a spectral barb chain at a creature you can see within range. The target makes a strength saving throw, and on a failed save, the target takes 2d6 force damage and is pulled up to 30 feet towards you, and is bound by the chain. While bound by the chain, the creature is tethered to you and can't move or teleport to a space more than 34 foot away from you, and you have advantage on attack rolls made against the creature. And you have advantage on any attack rolls made against. The fact that this stops teleportation is absolutely huge. On a successful save, the target only takes half as much and isn't bound. The bound target can repeat the save at the end of each of its turns, ending the spell on success. And if you move 30 feet away from it, the spell ends. It's good. It's a really good one for threatening enemy monsters, and it's a good one for like stronger NPCs that you might want to prove that you're serious about, or just keep them nearby if they're, you know, troublesome in any way. The damage goes up by 1d6 for every spell at level 2 as well, which is a nice little bonus. So yeah. Next is Clutch of Darkness, which is from the Cthulhu by Torchlight book. This is one of the ones which I don't think is overpowered, but is really interesting from a design standpoint. This is a bonus action to cast and also lasts a minute. You create a terrible force that slowly crushes the target from the inside. Choose a target you can see, choose a creature you can see within range and roll 2d6 and record the total rolled. At the start of each of your turns, you roll another 2d6 and add the number rolled to the total. So this doesn't do any damage at any point. It also doesn't have a save, I just realised, so that's a little busted. I'd probably implement a save. Goodness. Cthulhu by Torchlight is set in a version of D&D where things without saves is viable and it makes sense, but the power level is undoubtedly higher than it normally is. If the total of the number that you've rolled is higher than the target's strength, it has disadvantage on strength-based attacks. If the total is higher than its dex, its speed is halved and attack rolls against it have advantage, and if you can make the total higher than its hit points, the target implodes, which is obviously bad. I like that this doesn't do damage, but does do other stuff, and I like that it's kind of a scaling effect where you're going to have multiple effects before it eventually does anything. There's a chance this does nothing because, you know, the creature gets finished off before you even get to roll a decent amount of dice. There's a chance that it does nothing because you roll terribly, and that's that. I've kind of talked myself around to it not having a save again, but I know that that's something that not a lot of DMs and GMs particularly enjoy. I don't mind these really niche effects having no saves, but I need to play with it a bit more before I settle on it. My players are generally quite powerful because I am overly generous with magic items, but that means I get to use stronger creatures too, so that's fun for me. Next we have Defenestration, which is from Valda's Spire of Secrets. This is an action to cast, it is instantaneous, and it has a 30-foot range. A wave of force erupts from your open hand, hurling a creature you can see through a window. The target makes a strength saving throw, and on a failure the target is pushed 20 feet up to 20 foot away and thrown through a window of your choice. If there is no window within 20 feet of the target, because those are kind of niche, it is instead pushed 20 feet in a direction of your choice and thrown through a window of arcane force, which materializes behind the window and vanishes after it shatters. The target takes 4d6 slashing damage and has the prone condition when it is thrown through a window. On a successful save, the target is instead pushed only 10 feet and takes no damage. If you upcast this, you increase the damage and also the length of distance pushed. I slept okay last night. Why is my brain doing this to me? Anyway, those two numbers go up. This is obviously kind of funny rather than necessarily being particularly broken, but given that it's on the Bard, Sorcerer and Wizard spell list, I think it fits a lot of character concepts actually where you're trying to embarrass them rather than necessarily destroy them. But it does a decent amount of damage along with that, and obviously being prone is bad for casters but good for everyone else, generally. I don't know, I like it a lot. I know that this might be too silly for some people. Enspelled Armament. This is not an enspelled weapon. It's very different, in fact. This is a bonus action to cast 2 and it lasts for an hour. This one has some really interesting upcasting effects as well, which I really, really like. I just like magic weapons, man. Whenever I play Skyrim, I know everyone goes Shadow Archer, but I always go Conjuration weapons. I love summoning a Spectral Blade. It just speaks to me in ways that I should probably go and talk to someone about, but here we are. So when you cast this, you choose one simple or martial weapon. A replica of the chosen weapon made of iridescent energy appears in your hand. For the duration, you are proficient with the weapon, and whenever you attack with the weapon, you can use your spellcasting modifier for the attack and damage rolls instead of strength or dex. This is great for the gishes where you sometimes have to choose between dex or strength or your actual spellcasting modifier. This allows you to ignore that and just go with it. It is only on the sorcerer spell list though, which is a shame, but hey. Anyway, attacks made with the weapon don't require ammunition, and if you throw the weapon as part of a ranged attack, it returns to your hand immediately after resolving the attack. The damage dealt by the weapon is force instead of the weapon's normal damage type. If you upcast this, it deals an extra 1d4 of damage for each spell slot above level 2, and if you cast it using a level 5 or above slot, the weapon lasts for 8 hours. It's very cool. So theoretically, you can make this weapon and give it to someone else. They can't use your spellcasting modifier, but theoretically they can use their own spellcasting modifier for it, or maybe the DM would rule that they could. I do think this should be on more spell lists, because the sorcerer spell list is tricky to access, but I really like it as a spell, because, as I said, conjuring weapons just speaks to me. We're back to Valda's Spire of Secrets for the next one. This is Recall, and it takes a bonus action to cast, and it lasts for 1 round. You record your location when you cast the spell. Until the end of your next turn, you can take a reaction in response to an attack roll, a creature casting a spell, or a creature moving within 5 feet of you to teleport back to that location, or to the nearest unoccupied space if that space is occupied. The teleportation precedes the triggering attack or spell, and then the spell ends. This is kind of like Tracer's ability in Overwatch, but in a turn-based game, which is obviously stronger, at least for those of us who are past the age of 30 and whose reflexes might be slowing down, at least in video games. I still have to catch my kids occasionally when they fall over, and let me tell you, that requires some reflexes. This is a very novel spell. Again, I don't think it's broken. I think it's a good way of getting a spellcaster out of trouble, and it requires a bit of setup along with a spell slot, along with the fact that this could be wasted if nothing happens to you. So I like it a lot. Sanguine Secrets is another Crooked Moon spell. This is also a bonus action that lasts for 1 round, although I don't think you have to use this in combat, which I'll get to. You draw knowledge through the power of blood about a creature you can see within range. You learn the target's species and creature type, its current hit points, and any conditions affecting it. You also learn if it has any of the following, and if so, what they are. You learn vulnerabilities, resistances, and immunity to both damage and conditions. Additionally, the next ability check or attack roll you make against the target before the end of your next turn has advantage. This is a really good information spell. I think you can use this against a creature you think you're going to fight at some point and cast it. It doesn't say that the creature knows that you cast it, which is always helpful, and it's a great way of encouraging players to kind of prep for a fight ahead of time if they can sneak up on it. I think it promotes a really good use of the exploration and scouting stuff, which D&D doesn't always do well at, and that's why I like it so much. Sealed Spellcasting is our penultimate one, and it comes from the Grim Hollow Player's Guide. I did say there were a lot of them. I think the last one's also Grim Hollow. I really like the book. Also, it's the most recent one. So look, this is an action to cast that lasts for 10 minutes and it has a range of 60 feet. When you cast this spell, choose a creature you can see within range. When the target casts a spell, it must make a charisma saving throw. On a failed save, the creature expends a spell slot to cast the spell as normal, but the spell has no effect. On a successful save, the creature casts the spell but takes 3d8 force damage. After the creature makes a saving throw, the spell immediately ends. The damage of this goes up by 1d8 for each spell slot above level 2. This is an aggressive, an active, proactive counterspell, and I like that a lot. I like what it does. I appreciate some people might view that as being too strong, but a lot of the magical effects in D&D as of 2024 rules aren't spells anyway, and this doesn't work against those. This specifically states about spell slots, which means it doesn't work against everything, and I think that's fine. Also, it's a charisma save, and spellcasters can often have high charisma saves anyway, so yeah, I don't think it's too strong. I think it's cool. I'm here for it. It's another sorcerer only one though. Let me use it with my bard. You know? Finally, we have Summon Plant, which is another Grim Hollow one. I really like the summon spells. As I have said, like conjuring weapons. I also like conjuring things to help me in fights. I know that it can slow combat down a bit, but if you're a player with some experience, it's not as much of an issue. The issue comes from when you've got a player who doesn't plan their turns ahead of time, or one who's barely paying attention. And ultimately, those players have bigger issues than the summon spells or any of the other spells, right? So just play a fighter if you're not going to pay attention, okay? Okay. That's not because fighters are easy. That's because they just hit things in combat most of the time. Anyway, Summon Plant is an action to cast. It lasts for an hour. You call forth a plant spirit. It manifests in an unoccupied space you can see within range. The corporeal form uses the plant spirit stat block, which we'll go over. When you cast the spell, you choose a floral feature, blooming, oaken, or thorny. The creature resembles an animated plant marked by the chosen floral feature, which determines one of the traits in its stat block. The creature disappears when it drops to 0 hit points or the spell ends. The creature is an ally to you and your allies, and in combat shares your initiative account but takes its turn immediately after yours. It obeys your verbal commands, no action required, and if you don't issue any, it takes the dodge action and uses its move to avoid danger. The spell's spell slot. Use the spell slot's level for the spell's level in the stat block. So, as this is a level 2 spell, I will give it the level 2 stats, but these can scale up. So it would normally have 11 plus 2 as your AC. It has 20 health for the blooming. It has 20 health for the blooming and the thorny, and 30 for the oaken, and it gets an extra 10 health for everything above that. And it has a speed of 30 feet, and it can climb if it's the blooming and the thorny one, so not if it's the oaken one. It has immunity to blinded, deafened, exhausted, and stunned. It has tremor sense beyond 30 feet, and is blind beyond that. And it understands the languages that you know. Along with that, if it is in sunlight and it starts its turn in sunlight and has at least 1 health, it regains 1 health at the beginning of its turn, and it gets different attacks depending on the version it is. If it's the blooming one, it can cause a burst of petals to fill the air within a 10-foot emanation. The area becomes heavily obscured, so you can hide. All of them can use the slam attack, which is 5 feet reach. It does 1d8 plus 3 plus 2 damage at this point, which does bludgeoning damage normally, or piercing if it's the thorny one. And then for its reactions, it gets 1 if it's an oaken, 1 if it's thorny. If it's oaken, when a creature within 5 feet of the plant takes damage from an attack, the plant can take the damage instead, which is cool. And then prickly protection, which is the thorny only one. When a creature within 5 feet of the plant attacks it, the plant makes a slam attack with advantage against the creature, which is also cool. I like the stat block. I like plants. They don't like me. I get really bad hay fever, but here we are. And this is a really good one for those druids that love plants rather than just animals. I like it a lot. It's on the druid and the ranger. I think it's a really well designed summon spell with a lot of interesting intricacies and changes you can make depending on the version you choose, and obviously it scales up at an alright pace. I don't think any of the summons have enough health, but that's just my opinion, man. Anyway, that ends this edition of Jason Talks About Spells He Likes. I can talk about stuff I like all day. I like a lot of stuff in D&D. That's why I play it. That's why I homebrew for it. In fact, because I like it, as it turns out. But yeah, if you enjoyed this, please like and subscribe. I will be back next week with 3rd level spells. Assuming nothing comes out, I review. The way I'm doing my videos at the moment is I'm filming them a couple weeks ahead of time, so that I've got a little bit of leeway. And then if something comes out that I'm going to review, which should be happening soon because we'll be getting a slew of first party books, I will slot that in instead, trying to be a little kinder to myself, especially now that I'm not doing the interviews once a week. So I'm putting a little more effort into the videos. Not that the interviews weren't effort, it's just that they required very little editing, whereas these obviously require a bit more. Anyway, with all of that in mind, if you enjoyed this, like and subscribe. I hope you are well, I hope you take care, and I will see you next time. Goodbye.